Hello and welcome to the Scott Mansell podcast, where I speak with incredible people from motorsport, F1, engineering and business. In today's podcast, I talk with Formula One's digital presenter, Will Buxton. Will is a true motorsports fan with a huge passion for our sport. We talk about when he travelled to every European Grand Prix in a campervan, when he got to drive a 2012 Lotus F1 car, and why he enjoys Indycar so much. Hello, Mr. Will Buxton. Great to meet you. How are you getting on?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, all very good here. Thank you very much. Well, let's jump straight into it. I think the biggest thing that stands out to me about you, and the thing that I absolutely love, is your obvious and huge passion for F1 and motorsport in general.
Yeah.
And it seems that you've had that passion for a long time, because in the research that I was doing, I could see that in 2004 you travelled to all of the European F1 races in a campervan.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about why you decided to go ahead and do that?
So, I'd always wanted to be an F1 journalist from like the age of 13. It was all I ever wanted to do. It was the year that Ayrton was killed, and my dad bought me my first copy of Autosport and Motoring News and all of that, and I knew then what I wanted to do. And I left uni and managed to blag myself a gig working for David Tremaine at Formula One magazine.
Right.
And a year and a bit into that, the magazine got shut down. It was literally like a week before Australia, a week before the first race. And the lawyers came in and said, that's it, Bernie's pulled the plug, game over. So I'm 23 and I've just lost my dream job. And my parents just said, look, you can't let it go. You've got to keep it going. And they lent me a bit of money, and I bought a camper van with it, and I just drove to all of the races in Europe and did that. Lived with the fans in the campsite, which was just, I mean, so much fun. And every day I'd kind of bring them back caps or t-shirts or whatever I could get from the teams. And it was wonderful because they'd ask every day, you know, what's going on in the paddock and what are the drivers really like and what's the vibe really like, and I kind of felt like I acted like a conduit of they were at the races, but I was kind of bringing them with me and allowing them into the paddock with me. And so every night I went back to the campsites, just, you know, regaling them with stories of, you know, of what the paddock was really like. And I hope that's kind of been at the basis of everything I've sort of tried to do since, which is kind of like bring everyone along for the ride. And because I you know, we're really lucky to kind of do that job and get that access and be that close. And Formula One was always so exclusive and elitist. I sort of wanted to just open it up and bring everyone with me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And with all that contact with the fans, did you learn a lot from just, you know, the questions that they were asking you and the information that they wanted to find out?
Oh, yeah, so much about what people really did want to know and what really interested people. You know, you have your own ideas about what interests you, but when you speak to people of different nationalities and what interests them, I got a much better handle on, you know, not just a British perspective, but sort of that international view of, and why they liked the sport, you know, what made them fall in love with it, what made them keep coming back. I mean, Germany in particular was fascinating, and I've always remembered really fondly staying in the campsites at Hockenheim and the Nürburgring. And, you know, you forget that when Michael was coming up in the early 90s, you know, Germany had only just been unified. The wall had only just come down, and it was still quite scary for a lot of people, this notion of a unified Germany and people showing support for their country. You know, patriotism only goes so far before people become scared that it's bordering on nationalism, and then, you know, where nationalism goes when it goes to the extremes is even scarier. And particularly for Germany as a country, you know, just trying to get back on its feet, it was really worrying. And so rather than supporting Germany and getting crazy enthusiastic about Germany, they could get enthusiastic about Michael.
Right.
And that's why they would wave the Ferrari flags and the, you know, the Ferrari logo, you know, is black, yellow, red. They got to have their national colours, but they could cheer for Michael. They sung the Italian national anthem, but they changed the words to be all about Michael. So they had their own kind of little bit of pride in Germany through Michael. And I never knew that. I never realised that that's why he was as important as he was. I learned all that in in the forests, in the campsites with the fans. So that was great, just gaining that understanding of why people love the same thing that we do.
Yeah, that's an incredible insight. And did you travel around each circuit and come back to the UK, or did you just do one massive tour for the whole year?
One massive tour. Wow. Massive tour.
I always think it's fascinating about racetracks. You know, I've been racing all my life and been lucky enough to go to many of the circuits, and you end up just knowing a very small part, but very well, of each separate country. And usually they're not in the places that you would typically go to, right? So it's fantastic.
They're not pretty parts of the countries. You know, if you base your knowledge of the countries that you go to on the racetracks that you visit. You think Japan and all of the beauty in Japan, and Suzuka is, it's in this industrial heartland, which is, it's not very nice looking. And we stay in Yokkaichi, which is a port town, and it's deadly. But it's fun. I've been to China how many times, and I've never seen the wall other than flying over it.
Yeah,
it's vocation, not vacation, and that's.
Well, hang on a minute. Paul Ricard, Imola, they're not bad places to go.
So Ricard, oh man, spent so much time there in the GP2 days that at one point, I was considering trying to find some ramshackle, beaten up old, place that you could do up and have in the south of France, and never bit the bullet back in the early 2000s, but God, I wish I had, because now it would just be... Yeah, that's a beautiful part, absolutely beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, I love going to Ricard. And actually, talking about Ricard, I saw that a number of years ago, I don't know when it was, but you drove the Lotus E20.
Yes, yeah, that was fun. Although David Croft will always tell you that he was faster than I was in the Lotus.
Was it on the day that Crofty did it?
Yeah.
Oh, I was there then because I coached Crofty. I worked for Lotus back then. Yeah. So I coached. I was on Sky Sports News because I worked with Crofty that day. So you must have been with somebody else.
Yeah, I must have been. That's crazy. No, I loved that. I loved it, and I'd just come back from doing I did the Florida Winter Series earlier in the year, so I'd been driving the little Tatus F4 car.
Yeah,
and I'd loved it, and I remember I got properly on it on the little Formula Renaults, and I was really enjoying it, but I spun down at the first corner and I got pulled in, and I was told, don't overdo it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, it's fine. I said, I just locked the rears coming in, but I've dialed the brake bias forward a little bit. And they were like, oh, okay, well, you go back out again. So, yeah, exactly. So that was great. I loved that. But Crofty will always say he was quicker than me that day. Because when you come through senior and then you straighten up and then you go into the spoon, that long right.
Yeah, the double right.
I just left it way too late, and I just went straight on. And I was, straight out. And and so I lost a huge gap, sort of big lump of time there. But he's never let me forget that.
And what was the most surprising thing about the F1 car?
Oh goodness, the most surprising thing, how small and shriveled my balls got at the end of the straight when I thought I can hold this flat into senior, I can do this right-hander flat out, and I went in and I was like, yeah, definitely gonna hold it, and my right foot just lifted like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't tell you to do that. I was like, not today. We're not doing this today. I was what was great was, they'd obviously put, TC on the car, and so, you could floor it out the corners and the back didn't step out on you. It was really planted, but it's how late you can brake, how hard you have to hit the brakes to keep the brakes actually up to temperature. That was a huge thing. And obviously it's the frustration because you do your lap out and then you're kind of flying, bringing it at the end of the flyer. So you never get a full proper run.
Yeah.
And you come in and you're like, oh yeah, but next time I would have done this and I would have done that. And that's why you only get the limited time, because they know that you'll put it in the wall on your next run, because the
confidence increases quite quickly.
Yes, but the skill level does not. So a wonderful experience that was.
To be fair to you, coming down the back straight when you go into senior there, it's surprising actually, because you can't see very much as you go in. So you arrive thinking, well, I know it's flat, I can do this. But when you get there, it's a lot trickier than you might think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. it's, as you say, you've got that slight rise up the hill, and it is slightly blind on entry. You're not quite sure where you need to be, particularly not if you are not a professional racing driver and don't have the necessary capabilities. But that was great. I loved that, and really appreciative for, for Lotus and those guys. It's still a school, isn't it? They're still doing it there. Is it Fred Garcia is still running it, I think.
It's a combined thing through Winfield Race School
Yes.
and Renault or Alpine. So they do those things together. And I worked with Winfield for a number of years, which was always great fun to put people into the Formula One car. It's crazy, right? And just for the listeners to understand what the format was like, drivers would come along, not necessarily having ever been on track before. They would do 2 or 3 sessions in an F4 car of maybe 20 minutes each.
Yeah.
And then jump in the Formula One car, which was it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
But just bloody bonkers, though. But great fun. Really great fun. And then you got a 2-seater ride. I think I got mine with Nicholas Prost in what was, I think it was like a Franken car, a bit of everything sort of thrown together. But it looked like an old sort of, I think it looked like an old Panos Champ car or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, I've driven that thing a couple of times. It's thrilling, shall we say? Yeah. It's so long. It's so long.
Yes, it's like a limo.
Yeah, it's like a limo. It's crazy. So you also mentioned that you drove in the Florida Winter Series as well. Had you done any driving previously on track, or were you just getting given opportunities here and there because of your profile?
Yeah, so I was working for NBC at the time, and this was it only lasted for 1 season. Everybody said it was sort of bankrolled by Lawrence Stroll so that Lance could get a bit of single-seater time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the truth behind that, but it did only last for that 1 year when Lance was in it. But it had a stellar lineup. It was Max Verstappen, Lance Stroll, Nicholas Latifi, Tatiana Calderon, Antonio Fuoco, Raffaele Marcello, Ed Jones, some really great, really tidy Dennis van der Laar, some really great, really tidy peddlers there who've gone on to do so much in their own careers. And there was a journalist car put aside for each round. And Ferrari said, did I want to go and do one of the rounds? I'm like, yes, absolutely. And it was brilliant because it gave me that real first-hand experience of what it was like to go out and to try and compete. I can't say that I raced. I can't say that I competed. I shared a racetrack with those guys, but it was very quickly obvious of why I talk about it and why I don't do it. I think my first practice session I was like 17 seconds off the pace, but it got by the end of the weekend I was running within 2 seconds of those guys, and I was happy with that. I was happy with the kind of the progress that I'd made. Happy to get to the end of my last race without being lapped, and will forever be able to say I finished ahead of Nicholas Latifi in a race. So that's I'll take that. But it was a hell of an experience. For the first time, really understanding how aerodynamics work and how when you're on it and you're giving the car the messages, stop or go, that it reacts to you. You can't just leave it neutrally through a corner. You have to be telling it what to do. And that first time that you really put it into a corner and you feel the effect of the aerodynamics, what it actually means and the confidence that it then gives you and how you build that up. What getting marbles on your tires feels like, what dirty tires feel like, what dirty air feels like, what a slipstream feels like. Because as you just speak about them, you understand the theory. Yeah. You understand what it means, but you don't know the experience. So to have that was amazing. And there was a hell of a lot of running as well over the course of the weekend. Way more than in sort of an F2 or an F3 series now. There was loads of running, and also to meet these guys when they were so young. Max was just out of karts, Lance was just out of karts. This was their first competitive single-seater experience, and seeing this sort of blossoming potential in these guys was absolutely incredible. The one good thing I could take out of it was I had the best race starts. I had the quickest reaction time and the best race starts out of anybody.
Is that right?
But then Luca Baldesseri was just like, "How old are you, Will?" And I was just like, when was it? It was 24. I was like, "I'm 33." He's like, "Yeah, okay, these guys are 15, right? You've been driving how long?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've had my license 16 years." They were like, "Yeah, if your clutch control wasn't a little bit better than these guys who don't yet have a driving license, there'd be something wrong." So that was the only thing I could do well.
And did you get into contractual talks or
No.
no?
No, but it was fun, it was lovely, and I got to say it was really nice. I remember my parents came to a race a few years afterwards, and it was at Spa, and it's, as always at Spa, the race ended, and about an hour and a half after the race ended, it started pissing it down with rain, and so we ran into Red Bull to hide from the rain, and Max Verstappen came up and said, "Oh, these are your parents?" And I was just like, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you, I'm Max. Will taught me everything I know." Which was really lovely, and that meant a lot to they obviously knew he was just joking, but it was a really sweet thing, and
Yeah.
Sort of threw back to that time. It was really nice.
But had you done anything on track before that? Like, for you to get within a couple of seconds of those guys, even though they were young, they'd been karting all their lives. Like, that's very, very impressive.
Thank you. I'll take that. It was at Palm Beach, which is a really tricky little track because it's all hairpins. And
I've never been there. Is it bumpy?
No, it's relatively smooth, but it's you start, finish straight, quick little flick left right, left hand hairpin, then relatively sort of medium quick right, then another right, then a hairpin, then a long straight, then a hairpin, and a flick back through onto the straight. It's a relatively short track, but each of the corner sequences you can lose a lot of time through it, sort of particularly as a novice. But it was no, like, I did a bit of karting for fun with mates and all of that, but I'd never, those who can do and those who can't talk about it, and I never had any delusions that I was any good in a racing car. But it was fun. I really loved it. I really, really loved it.
And would you like to get in anything again?
I don't have the. I think it's clear that I have neither the skill, the finances, or the time to do it. But God, yeah, I loved it. I mean, how could you not? You know what it is. You know the thrill, the excitement, and the stillness. That's just that oneness when you're strapped in to a racing car, and your concentration is so there. There was just one tiny little moment where I think I got to experience a little bit of what everyone sort of explains about when they're absolutely in the zone to speak. I can't say that I was properly there, but where I started noticing the changes in the color of the asphalt, and everything was kind of really clear in my periphery, and almost sort of tunnelish. And that was great. I just had it for like one lap. I was like, this is where I need to be. And then I missed my braking zone, and then I'm panicking, and my engineer's like, come on, calm down, we'll get it back. That lap was 5 seconds slower than your last one, and whatever. But that's
the magic
wonderful
moment. When you're in that flow and everything is just silent and everything's working so well, and you've got this extra like capacity on top of you. It's a fantastic moment when you feel like that and everything's fluid.
And the peace, the tranquility of actually being on the grid after the formation lap, waiting for the lights to go out. That moment seemed to last forever, and it was just it felt magnificent. It was the calmest and sort of most serene thing I think I've ever experienced. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it's almost like meditation. Like, you're just so hyper focused on one thing that it's just everything else just disappears.
Amazing. It was, as I say, look, I can't claim to be a racing driver, but just to experience it for that week, to get some idea of it was wonderful.
Yeah, and it must help what you do now, right? To have that insight into the whole kind of process of driving.
Massively, yeah, and it's all about learning. It's all about gaining a better level of understanding, and hopefully that did that.
Yeah, brilliant. So I was having a quick flick through your Instagram, and I saw a picture of a car that I know pretty well, a Benetton B192.
Yep.
And I saw that you have a soft spot for that car for some reason.
Yeah, So when I was a kid, my dad took a new job, and he had to move down to the south of England. I was at school in Worcestershire at the time, and so we rarely kind of got to see him during the week because he was working down south, and we come back at the weekends. Right. And I was at that early teenage stage of being a bolshy little shitbag, as we all are as kids at that age, and I thought I ruled the roost. I was the man of the house during the week, and all of that. And then he'd come back, and we would just argue constantly at the weekends. And one weekend he knew that I loved Formula One, and we'd kind of watch it together. And he bought me the Tamiya model kit to make the B192, and so we'd sit there and we made it together, and it was a really happy time, and we got on really 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 great. It just sort of it was one of those real kind of bonding moments with my dad, and he died a few years ago, and so just seeing that car in the flesh just kind of brought it all back, that happiness of one of those bonding moments with somebody who was such a key influence on my life, and somebody I think about every day, and who I missed terribly, and just that one little thing that he did that really kind of like brought us really 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 close.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, and did he get you into motorsport? Was he into Formula One?
So, no, not at all. Like he kind of, I think like sort of most people of his, he grew up in the he was born in the mid 40s, so he grew up through, he was a late teenager, through the great golden era of Formula One, through the 60s and into the 70s, and he was, I think he sort of liked it in passing, but was never a massive fan. It was my kind of fanaticism for it that then brought him in, and we'd watch it together and go to the British Grand Prix practice days together because we couldn't afford to go to the race, so we'd go to the Friday and together and all that, and no, it was, he took me to the Prescott Hill climb, and I found, you may have seen him sort of trawling through the Instagram page, I found when I was with Mum and we were going through some of Dad's stuff after he died, a page from a notebook from when I was really little. I would have been about probably 4 years old, something like that. We went to the Prescott Hill climb, and I wrote, what I did for my weekend, and it was the hill climb, and it was cars going up the hill and blah blah blah. And that was my first experience of motorsport. And I remember it. I really remember it. It's lodged in the back of my head as that first, sort of adoration of the thrill of the speed and the sound and the smell. And it was the smell of it that really just got me hooked. And I fell over a tent peg outside, big tent in one of those horrible big metal, with bird edges thing. And I've still got the scar on my shin. So I always say that motorsport physically affected me from the first day.
Amazing. Fantastic story. So do you have any kids, Will?
I do. I have a daughter. She's 10. She's wonderful. She, I think, kind of like gets the whole racing thing, doesn't really like it. She's very much her own person. She, I think, will never set foot in a racing car or want to, which is great. I'm a new parent, so I've been having congratulations
with a few people about whether their kids are into racing themselves and if they would kind of go into karting. I spoke to Rob Spendley last week, who's fully behind the e-karting series.
Yes, of course.
Seen that. And his ideas for that are absolutely fantastic, actually. Yeah. As you probably know, the issues with karting is the difficulty in keeping all the machinery of a similar spec, especially the engines, and they're going through the kind of EV route to standardise all of that, which is great. So hopefully that will go well in future years.
Yeah, I had a good chat with Rob about that, because Rob is working sort of officially for Formula One as well. So we had a chat about that. And then actually the last time I saw Rob was just before, goodness me, I think it was just before lockdown. I can't remember if it was lockdown 2 or lockdown 1. And I went out with my fiance for dinner, and we ended up sat at the table next to Rob and his wife. And it was like, oh God, not you. And so that was really funny. That was in Oxford. That was Rob's a great guy, and that, as you say, the EV karting that he's pushing through. It's such a great idea to try and, as you say, create that a level playing field, but a sort of an affordable playing field as well, because karting can be, as we know, can be so damn expensive.
Yeah, and that's, I grew up in karting, and one of the issues is, as a kid, it's quite challenging to accept when you've got all these massive teams in there, and you're with your old man in a van, and
Yeah.
you don't know whether it's your skill or the cart or whatever it is. And I think just having that very level playing field will really, I don't know, I think it will breathe some new life into karting.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great. The promise is there, and it's a wonderful idea. And yeah, let's hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. So what does a typical year look like for you, Will? Obviously there's a lot of travelling involved and moving around, and what does that look like?
It's busy. It's really busy. I mean, we can't base it on last year. Last year was so weird. But normally the year looks like January, sleep, see friends, see family, remind them what your face looks like. Then February launches, for about 2-3 weeks, pretty intense going through the launches. Then straight to testing. Come home from testing, spend a week or 10 days at home, and then it's off to the race. And then you're pretty much non-stop until November, December. 3 weeks off in August, but that's it. Otherwise you're at the race, you're home on the Monday, chuck your stuff in the washing machine, iron it, repack it, and then head off the next week. It's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of hours in the sky. As I said, it's vocation, not vacation, because when you arrive at the track, it's very much, airport to hotel, hotel to track, hotel to track, hotel to track, hotel to airport, home. And that's not a complaint. Goodness, I've had 20 years of loving what I do, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's incredible. But I haven't seen much of the countries that I've been to other than the racetracks. But it's busy, and it's great. It's you can't complain if you're doing something that you absolutely love. It's wonderful. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Brilliant. So I read on your blog that at the beginning, when you first met Nico Rosberg, you didn't particularly get on with him.
I hated him.
Well. Is that?
I hated him.
Why?
I just thought he was a cocky prick. I hated him. And,
like a racing driver stereotype.
Just the absolute, entitled son of a world champion.
Yeah.
Flicking it, looking like a L'Oreal advert, flicking his hair, walking in, all that. Just I am the big I am. And I just thought, oh man, we're just not going to get on at all. And we didn't. We really didn't get on. But then it kind of came out that actually he liked to really play with people. He liked to kind of toy with you and try and wind you up. And I realised that most of the time he was just trying to wind me up. And we ended up getting on really well, actually. I don't know if it's sort of audio or visual with this, but if I move my camera up, that there's a Nico Rosberg, that's his GP2 shirt on my wall. In my office, which he signed at the end of the year. So we were getting on all right by the end of the year. We were getting on good by the end of the year. But yeah, so I really liked him in the end, and I loved the way that he raced in GP2. He was one of those drivers where you could have put a 5-penny piece on the apex of every corner, and he would have gone out and they would have been embedded in the tyre when he came back after every lap. He was just metronomic, consistent, never faltered. He was so clean, so clinical. I really came to respect him and like him very much as a driver.
He won the first year of GP2, right? But 2005.
He did. He beat Kovalainen, which at the time was a massive coup. And the amazing thing with all of that was Nico was supposed to sign for BCN because the last year of Formula 3000, Arden and BCN would be the two teams to beat. BCN competition being Scalabroni's team.
Yeah,
and they'd run Toccacello and guys like that, and they'd been really, really successful. And Arden was Christian Horner's team, and they'd run Dornbos and Liuzzi.
I tested with Arden that year in the last year of
In 3000.
3000, yeah, before they went to GP2.
That was such a good time. I loved that those last sort of years of 3000 going into GP2. It was such a fun time. I can't believe we actually haven't. It's so crazy. Like our paths are so similar, and the fact that we've not sort of met properly is mad. But yeah. So the plum seats theoretically with the new GP2 series in '05 were Arden and BCN.
Yep.
And then out of nowhere, you had ASM in F3, which Fred Vasseur was running that, and then he joined a collaboration with Nicholas Tott and created ART, which, as we know, became this all-conquering force in junior single-seaters. But it was a little bit of an unknown, and it was supposed to be Jamie Green was supposed to be the number one for ART.
Right.
But he decided instead that he was going to go to DTM, and so there was suddenly this seat at ART/ASM, and Nico chose that. Now, if Nico had gone to BCN, as he was supposed to, instead of ART, it would have looked very, very different, because BCN ended up being nowhere. They ran Yoshimoto and Viso in that first year.
Yeah.
Were both great drivers, by the way. But Rosberg ended up at ART, being run by Vasseur, and took that rookie championship, which no one could have foreseen. So it's one of those sliding doors moments. What if Jamie Green had taken that ART seat? Would he have got that F1 place? The year before Lewis. It's incredible to think about it, really, and also how Rosberg's career could have been so incredibly different.
Yeah. And of all the years watching GP2, F2, in the kind of standard formula, who's been the most impressive driver to you?
You can't not say Lewis, can you?
Right.
Because Lewis was phenomenal. Leclerc as well.
Yeah.
Just those two were real head and shoulders impressive from the first moment, and the kind of guys that leave you really speechless, that you sort of jaw on the floor watching a race, thinking that it's actually been choreographed rather than it's happening live in front of you.
Yeah, I did that a number of times with Lewis, actually.
It's just it's one of those crazy things. But yeah, Lewis was phenomenal. Right from the outset, just brilliant. There have been a number of drivers that I always really loved that never quite made it. Pantano for me has always been one of the greats. I've written about it countless times, and I think Giorgio deserved way more from the sport than he ultimately got. He would have been a monster in Indycar, and Chip Ganassi loved him. Chip reckoned he was as quick as Dario Franchitti, and Chip would have loved him if he had a bit of backing. Chip would have taken him like that. But I always thought Giorgio deserved more than he got.
And ultimately, why didn't he progress?
Money. It was ultimately money. I mean, he had the seat at Jordan, and that was just a real mess. And again, came down to finances, and his parents were about to put their house on the line, and Giorgio just said, "Look, I can't do this. I need to walk away." Maybe didn't utilise the opportunities presented to him as well as he might have done. But I remember sort of talking to Giorgio at the time and looking back at his career and saying, if a kid had ever come through go-karts today with the kind of talent that Giorgio did, there would have been this incredible fight for him. And then a couple of years later along comes Max, and exactly that kind of that war between Mercedes and Red Bull, and who would get his signature, is exactly what would have happened for Giorgio 20 years previously. But Max, I think, is what Giorgio would have been if Giorgio had been properly managed. Yeah.
And Will, am I right in thinking that you were involved in IndyCar as well in the US?
Yeah, so NBC, I loved working with NBC. I started at a speed channel, moved over to NBC, had a great time broadcasting to the US, and they got me out to a couple of IndyCar races, which I just adored, and I still do love it. If there was a time to do IndyCar and F1, I'd do it in a heartbeat. If the travel limitations weren't in place, or I don't know, if I lived in the States, I'd be happy just doing IndyCar. I absolutely adore it. It's such a great championship. Everyone always says it's the greatest racing championship that no one watches, and I don't understand why the figures aren't higher for it, because it has that same kind of community-led, familiar, friendly, fun environment of an F2 or an F3. But it's super competitive. The drivers, the quality of the drivers are amazing. You look at the lineup this year; it's insane.
Yeah.
Like one of the strongest I've seen in years. You think Jimmy Johnson, you're leaving NASCAR and going over to IndyCar, going against the greats who are already there, and you got Roman is popping in as well. There's such a strong lineup in IndyCar this season, and Scott McLaughlin going over from Supercars as well. Like there's such a great pool of talent, great tracks.
Great tracks.
And it's just total fever tracks. Everyone's like, oh, it's all ovals. It's like, there's three all season, and one of those is the Indy 500. It's mostly road and street courses these days. It's proper racing, elbows out, no power steering, great looking cars, great sounding cars. It's a proper championship. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I think I raced over there for a couple of years. I did Indy Lights, and the tracks are just like, it's like going back 40 or 50 years in Europe. Like, they are so raw. You go to Watkins Glen or Sonoma or one of these.
Sonoma.
There's so much fun.
Yeah. I remember being I was in the media center, and they were giving the photographers their briefing before first practice at Sonoma. And I kid you not, the advice was that if you were stood, because Sonoma, you've got the really arid grass. It's not really grass. It's all brown and dusty. And then you get those concrete blocks that usually stand outside, Parliament buildings or whatever, so people can't bomb them. Those big, massive sort of dividers. And then they've got those. And then you've got about 10, 20 meters, and then there's catch fencing. And the honest to God advice was, for photographers, you can stand behind the concrete barrier, and if a car comes to the barrier, is going to collide with the barrier, just duck, because if the car flips, it'll go over your head. And that was genuinely the advice. And you're like, that's the advice. It's brilliant. It's just so raw. I got a 2-seater ride at Sonoma with Mario Andretti. I kid you not, one of the greatest experiences of my life, because the Indy 2-seater, the back seat is slightly raised, so you look through the roll hoop. And if you can imagine going around Sonoma with Mario, who was, I think, 77 or 78 at the time, absolutely on it, back end kicking out every corner, and you look through the roll hoop, and there's that silver helmet. Oh goodness, I'm sorry. Did that come through?
No, I didn't. We didn't hear anything.
Oh, good. Sorry, I'll start that again. So if you can imagine then looking through that roll hoop, and you've got a silver helmet with that red stripe going through it, it was chills, absolute chills.
That sounds fantastic. I remember going over there. I was 19 when I went over to the States, expecting it to be like full F1 spec or GP2 spec, and I arrived, and you just had that. At Watkins Glen, there were like awnings and garages. You could just wander around. The cars were just on the corner weight scales in the garage. Everything was open. It looked like, it looked like a Club F3 race. I couldn't believe the difference to what we had here in Europe. And that's what I fell in love with over there. It was just that, like you said, the rawness, the community, and especially the tracks. It's like, when you're driving around one of those circuits, like you really have to give it a lot of respect.
Oh, and the physicality of it. You see the IndyCar drivers after, when they come back from, what's the track? I can't remember. The one that used to have the train line that ran through it, and their hands would be falling apart at the end of the race just from the blisters. And they're hard ass. Those guys, they're amazing. And there's a great bond that exists between all of the IndyCar drivers as well, a real sense of, as you say, community spirit. They get on as friends off the track, and then they really take it to each other on on the track, and that's a wonderful spirit that doesn't exist everywhere. And to see that sense of community, I really like that, and it's existed for a long time. Good, well, possibly forever, but certainly these last few decades, it's been incredibly strong between everyone.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a really interesting season to see all these different drivers from different areas come in, and some of the young guys in, I know Rinus VK. It's going to be interesting to see how he gets on, because he had a great year last year as well.
Yeah.
So
he's looked good in testing.
Yeah, super fast, super confident, and it's going to be really interesting to watch him.
And O'Ward, I think O'Ward's got something really special. I like Patricio a lot.
Yes, yeah, a lot of good drivers in there. Okay, well, I think we'll finish it off there. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated speaking with you. That was a lot of fun, and thank you for sharing some of your passion with us.
My absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for asking me on. It's been a lot of fun, mate.
Cheers, Will. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, please go and subscribe. I mean it. Please take the 20 seconds. We have some incredible guests coming up from F1 and Motorsport, and it will really help launch the podcast. This has been a steep learning curve, to say the least. So if you have feedback, good or bad, please leave it, as I'm always looking to improve. Cheers, and see you soon.